Okay, I think it's working.
Yep, I see it working.
On Twitch. Is it working on YouTube?
I don't know.
I think I went to the wrong one. No.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't
For some reason, I went to the wrong one. For some reason, YouTube's showing 2 channels. I don't know why. I'll figure it out later. I don't understand why it's showing 2 live channels. Only one of these things is live. So, welcome to another episode of Panakal Podcast for Geeks. This one's about science fiction. I clearly am still learning how to use these programs because there's a good chance I botched this, but you said it's working on Twitch, so that's good enough for me. My guests are Joana Barnum, Justin Donaldson, Mike May, and Andrew Sides in this corner right here. I know my finger pointing looks completely different to you guys, but it's accurate on my screen. Don't worry. So thanks for being on this late at night. I understand. Usually on Wednesdays I do a art stream, but this time I decided we're gonna do a topic. So the topic is science fiction. I didn't really have a specific part of science fiction to talk about. I thought about this all day today, and I thought maybe we can start by maybe discussing your first introduction into science fiction, whether it was video games, movies, or books. I do not want to start.
Actually, and Alan, can we do the thing where because I don't know anybody here.
Okay, sure, no problems.
When you address them, it's like, hey, I'm so and so. I love I do this kind of art, and
So go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys. So why don't we start with Joana?
Hi. Well, we're all artists, aren't we? So,
yes, everyone in here is an artist.
I feel like everyone's intro is going to be the same. But yeah, I do watercolor painting. I do a combo of like personal fine art and illustration work in sort of a dark fantasy, dark art, dark surrealism genre.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in pretty much completely independent. For the past several years doing that, so
it's amazing. Justin.
Hey, yeah, I'm Justin Donaldson. I am also an independent artist, and I paint landscapes.
That's it. That's all you're gonna say. You paint.
Well,
I like seeing all your paint sitting out in front of you.
Oh yeah. This is kind of how they live. Otherwise,
what kind of paint is that?
This is good. I can just work right here. This is poster color.
It can just be open like that.
Oh, is that Knicker? Yeah.
It's basically like gouache. It reactivates basically exactly the same as it originally was. So if it dries out, doesn't matter. But I normally just like water them like plants at the beginning in the morning, and yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Andrew.
I am a acrylic and gouache artist. I actually do kind of this similar wheelhouse to like Joana, where it's a lot of dark art and stuff, and I do mostly illustration stuff. I've been trying to do more and more personal things. I have a day job as an apparel design artist. And I'm slowly trying to transition into being fully independent.
Show off also.
Kind of hard to carve that out.
So Andrew's also working on a personal project right now. I'm gonna have you plug your Cthulhu if you got that anywhere in there.
Oh yeah.
I'm excited about this.
Hold on.
If you sign up for his Patreon right now, you'll get access to order one of these cool statues. Mine should be in the next day or two. Yeah. So there it is.
Neat.
Nice.
Don't know. I have to do like the beauty cam thing.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, those things turned out great.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a nice weight too because they're resin, but it's cold cast resin, so it's a bronze powder mixed in with the resin to give it some weight and also
cool.
This patina on it.
Mm-hmm.
I originally, when I was first thinking about it, I considered like painting this, and I realized like they sell chemical patinas, and as long as there's enough metal within the resin, and if there's a thin coat of bronze powder on the outside of it, it'll also react just like a regular metal object would.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's neat because it's like it gives you it makes it really easy to have each one look unique because it's impossible to make nature that orderly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also sculpt here and there. I used to sculpt a lot of dinosaurs. Nowadays, I sculpt more and stuff just to kind of keep it all within the same sort of thing. And I've just been sculpting dinosaurs more for myself.
Nice.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
Nice.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
It's changed over the years. When I was a kid, it used to be Velociraptor because it's Jurassic Park.
Yes, exactly.
And nowadays, it kind of bounces between this guy who's a Carnotaurus. It's basically a mouth with legs. Its arms are even more useless than a T-Rex.
And eyebrows.
Yeah, so like random off topic on this, like a T-Rex arm, it's still actually a full arm when you consider it. Like there's an upper arm and a lower arm, and even though it's like tiny, it's still a full arm. This guy, the only visible part in his arm you see is his lower arm. His upper arm is like basically his shoulder socket.
That's weird.
Right.
Yeah, and there's even another one, I forget its name, but there's another one that's arms have regressed even further, and they're just basically two nubbin points that stick out of it. Yeah. So it's always a tie between this or any of the ceratopsians like Triceratops or Pseudoceratops, which is here. I'll show this one real quick, and that'll be it. This one I did a few years back with Dan's Dinosaurs. It was like the first one of this species as a resin kit on the market.
Nice.
Yeah, but no, I always love like their frills and horns and stuff, so that's always been fascinating to me. But nowadays, I mainly do that stuff for my own amusement.
I mean, that's the best way to do those things.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Mike, who's going to play some guitar for us? No, I'm just gonna keep asking. It might happen. Anyone watching
it? Any good, but I can do it. Yeah. So I'm a concept artist by day, and then I do a lot of dark art as well. I actually think I might own a Joana. Did you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my little miniatures from IX a couple years ago. Yeah.
And then, yep, I have it. Awesome. So, yeah, so I do concept by day, and then I have a whole bunch of stuff. I do stream, and not very frequently, though I'm getting back into it. Mike Mayart on Twitch. And like right now, I'm gonna help my buddy out with the Kickstarter thing by just doing some art for him. And it's hilarious. I have a friend that worked with me at where I work, and he's working at Firaxis now. I work at ZeniMax, and so I'm just throwing him some art for something he's putting together. It's like a zine. Every year they have a zine centered awareness thing, and so basically they feature people who are like making zines. So artists, actually, if you guys want, you still have the rest of the month. I think as soon as you get approved, then they'll feature you. They'll give you a little badge, and almost everybody who is doing it has been funded. So
that's cool.
Like, it's a popular thing. Anyway, so yeah, my daughter's an awesome artist. Her name is Bethany Jade Illustration. I always plug her. She's freaking rock star. I showed you her stuff earlier.
I saw her Instagram. I went and looked at it again today. She's killing it on there. So
yeah, she's rocking it. She's like over 100K followers now.
Is that more than you?
Oh yeah. No, I'm not very consistent on anything. I've got like 6K followers maybe, and it used to be higher.
Yeah. So, I would imagine your numbers would be pretty high.
But yeah, so I do all kinds of stuff. A lot of serious stuff. I've got a big drawing back there behind me that I'm working on. I do really detailed pencils.
Yeah, I'll post links to all you guys' stuff at the bottom of the video once I save it. So, all right. Well, let's get to the topic. Who would like to go first? No.
Yeah, you were okay. So I'm definitely.
So I said,
curious
my point is,
about-
so I said, what would you consider was your first introduction into science fiction? Because for some people it's movies, for some people it's books.
Does Star Wars count as science fiction in this? Or is it
Yeah, of
considered
course.
fantasy?
I would put it more in the science fiction area before fantasy.
I'd say for me that was probably one of the first introductions. That or do you know he was I'm assuming he's still alive. He was a young adult author named Bruce Colville.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
with the unicorns.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I don't know what else he wrote. I read his unicorn books.
He wrote a series on unicorns?
Yeah, I think so.
Never heard of it.
Oh man, he did a bunch of stuff like my teacher ate some students' brains or something like that, like stuff like that, where it's like a lot of B sci-fi.
Is he the one that wrote Monster Ring? Do you remember there's like one with the Monster Ring where you turn it 3 times and you become basically a monster?
You know, I don't know actually.
Okay.
I'd have to look.
I mean, that would be horror, I guess, not really science fiction. So
the most of the stuff I remember him for was like B movie or like B movie sci-fi trope ideas.
Sure.
Just as a book form. And it was one of those things like, you know, Scholastic Book Fair. They were always there, and I remember like early on, it's pretty much that, or Star Wars, or I would even I guess you'd consider Jurassic Park science fiction. That would pretty much be in there too. Mm-hmm. They were all about the same time when I absorbed them.
Oh man, I remember the first time I read Jurassic Park. We can talk about it later. Those are like books, and now I read like 2 or 3 books at a time. But when I was younger, books and I were not friends. I would just take one look at it and be like, that's too much reading. Because I read a lot of comic books, right? They're quick reads, and then I actually enjoyed comics a lot, obviously. But you know, science fiction, fantasy novels were always like 1,000 pages, you know, if not 500. So I'd always be like, not my cup of tea. But also I was a lazy kid, you know. But Joanna, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So so when I was very young, I was mostly into fantasy and horror, even to a degree, or kid horror, I guess, how you would categorize that. But I would say like my first true sci-fi experience was around middle school. We had to read Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury.
Yeah. That's a great book.
In class. And I was like, what is this? Like, this is great. And so then on my own, I read the Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. So to this day, he's one of my favorite authors. And I guess you wouldn't necessarily categorize, aside from those 2 books, I guess a lot of his books are more, some are fantasy and some are sort of even horror in a sense. But like he was definitely my first sci-fi. And then that sort of opened the door to other sci-fi novels like Heinlein and Dune.
Heinlein was the one I was gonna bring up. Was the first book I ever read. And I guess I would consider science fiction.
Which of Heinlein's?
Starship Troopers. I had a cousin who gave me that book, and I was like, again, I was very skeptical, you know. But it's not a really big book. So
I had a really hard time getting into that book.
It's what do you consider? It's considered like I don't want to call it high sci-fi. There's a specific terminology for that type
hard
of
sci-fi.
Hard sci-fi.
Hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
My first Heinlein was Stranger in a Strange Land.
That's the weird. Yeah,
that's a weird book, man. I read that book much later in life, and it still was like, I had to read it twice just to be like, okay, I get it. And I
definitely am like in a time where I like kind of want to go back and read a lot of the things I read when I was younger, but that I haven't reread since.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I'm half and half on that. Sometimes I want to reread stuff, and then sometimes I'm like, I want to read new stuff, but the new stuff just doesn't feel as good as the old stuff. even though it's probably just fine, right?
Unfortunately, it takes time to make nostalgia.
Truth. Justin, do you want to tell us about your?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I used to read a lot. It was basically all I ever did. And I was into a lot of fantasy stuff. And then found this book. It was by Philip E. High. And it's called Speaking of Dinosaurs. And so I kind of thought it was like, oh, this is going to be like a Jurassic Park kind of book. But the book, like, it basically tried to pull out every single trope that it could. Science fiction, and it was about dinosaurs and time travel and aliens. And I think that was my first sci-fi experience.
That sounds like a weird book.
It was a bit of a weird book. I'm not sure that I would like it if I read it now, but I really liked it then. And then I basically just hit up everything. But I also used to do a lot of. I found I forget what it's called, but the basically free audiobooks, things that are in the public domain. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of like Asimov and all of these classic sci-fi, like wonderful and terrible sci-fi.
Well, that dude wrote like 400 books or something.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he gets credit for writing them. You know, so I read a thing about Asimov when I was younger about how he, obviously this dude got divorced because he was never home for starters, but he had rented an apartment. I think he lived in New York, but he rented an apartment with a window facing a brick wall, basically, and he had 3 typewriters set up in that office. And he would go to the office. His office was this apartment every day, and he would sit down in front of each typewriter. And one typewriter was science fiction, and one typewriter was whatever, like fiction or whatever he's working on. And the third typewriter was usually like a physics book or a philosophy book, because he was also like I think he was a physics professor. So that one would be the nonfiction. And he would just go between all 3 of these typewriters as ideas were flowing out of him. So yeah, I'm sure he wrote a couple clunkers in there because
it's like the writing equivalent of a speed chest.
Yeah. And that's what he was doing, right? I mean, what's the Foundation trilogy, I think, is his biggest thing. And then, you know, the Laws of Robotics is, you know, he came up with that stuff, which is amazing. But yeah, I've read some books by him where I'm just like, this one's not good. And obviously there's no way you can, I mean, I don't know. There's probably a library, like you said, with all of his books, which is probably the only way you can read all. I don't know if anyone wants to read all 400 books, but he had this really good book called Extraterrestrial Civilizations. And if you can find that, it's probably like $5 or $10 on Amazon. But it was, it's a great book. It's nonfiction, but it's like him trying to explain why extraterrestrial civilizations would have to exist outside of our system. And, you know, he's using like math and science to be like, it's impossible to say that there isn't extraterrestrial life outside somewhere. And here's why. And he's not trying to make you like become like be like aliens exist, you know. He's just trying to be like, our planet cannot be the only one that's sustaining life like this. It's a very interesting read. I read it when I was like 14 or 15. I blew my mind. It's a different way of thinking, essentially. So, I mean, I believe that there's got to be something out there other than us. We cannot be the most intelligent things, but I forgot where I was going to go with this. Mike, how about you? What was your first?
Actually, I was going to say Star Wars also, but Buck Rogers, man, like,
oh my god,
in the day, and Star Trek, you know. But yeah,
I forgot about Buck Rogers.
Remember Twiggy?
Buck.
Yeah.
Buck Rogers was the first game I played on. It's like one of the very first console video games. My cousins had a Commodore 64 with Buck Rogers on it.
Yeah, I actually I remember being in love with it. I actually don't remember hardly anything other than there was a robot that like couldn't believe that humans, this totally fallible species, could ever have created something so perfect as him. You know, I remember that was a thing, and then there was Twiggy, who was like the adorable little, always happy.
Yeah, and they had that panda bear dog. I forget what it's called.
I don't remember. I wish I could remember all this stuff. But, that was a billion years ago.
I mean, that show was. It had its moments, but it's really hard to watch now if you go back. It's like you can enjoy it because you grew up with it, but at the same time you're like, wow, that's rough. Why did I think this was cool?
I still even skip the first 2 seasons of Stargate whenever I go back.
Oh man, I haven't seen Stargate in a long time.
Still haven't seen it.
I have this buddy in
the
college.
first two seasons, the characters are just like 2-dimensional.
Really?
I mean, that show got really popular. Really
I don't know. I think the early seasons are perfectly cromulent.
See, I mean, I still like that movie, man. When I first saw that movie, I was like, "This is a cool idea." It got a little rough at the end there, where they try to show too much at once, and I was like, "They've maxed out their budget." Like, you can always tell when that happens.
It's definitely one of the better Roland Emmerich movies.
Oh, I forgot he did that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say that was before Independence Day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was before Independence Day.
Yeah, that was around the same time as like Jurassic Park, I think.
So like, yeah, Jurassic Park, man.
Maybe
that
after?
I think it was after.
Yeah,
I remember they used a lot. Are you looking it up? Yeah, you tell us. So I remember Jurassic Park was one of these books where I had a friend who grew up here in Chicago. They moved to Florida, and he was visiting, and he had this book, and he's like, "Have you read Michael Crichton?" And I'm like, "No, I don't read books, man." But he's like, "You should read this book," and he's trying to. And the thing is, he's so excited about Jurassic Park. He's trying to talk to me about how, without giving away spoilers, he was like, they make dinosaurs, and then they're in this park, and they lose control of the park. And I'm like, what do you mean they're in a park, like a zoo? And he's like, something like that. But then he's like, and then there's this lysine contingency, and I'm like, and then he loses me, right? Because I'm just like,
oh, he's getting into like the weeds.
He's going straight in, right? And I don't understand what he's talking about, but he loves this book so much he leaves it with me when he goes back to Florida. He's like, I finished it on the drive here, you can have it, you read it. And because my dad was, at this time the movie was coming out in like a week, so my friend was like, read it and then go watch the movie, trust me, it'll probably be better. And I'm just like, sure, whatever. And I remember I sat down to start reading the book, and I finished the book in a day. Like, I liked it that much. I just kept reading.
How do the book and the movie compare? Because I've never actually read the book.
I mean,
now
the book is always going to be better.
I remember Alan Grant loves kids. That was a big divergence. And
Muldoon doesn't die.
Muldoon doesn't die. John Hammond does die.
John Hammond does die. He eats it.
John Hammond's also like way more sleazy. Like he's way more an allegory of like how bad corporations and capitalism can be in terms of like trying to control nature.
The movie.
Yeah. And I like how Crichton did a thing in the beginning of every chapter. He shows the chaos theory.
Yeah.
And you just meet a chaotician in the movie, but you never understand what a chaotician does. And he explains chaos theory as these chapters are evolving, and it's a visual, which is amazing for artists, right? But you get this visual of how it's getting bananas and out of control, and you're like, shit's about to hit the fan, but then they don't just flat out want to like just get off the island. They also want to protect, because Alan Grant is like, these are still living creatures, and he loves dinosaurs so much. He's like, you can't just rocket launch them out of existence. We need to make sure they're safe. We need to get out of here, but they should be protected too, right? And that's the whole thing there. And
there's a good throwaway line in the book that I wish made it into the movies, and I don't think they even touched on it until like the second Jurassic World, or maybe it was the first one, I don't remember. But there's a part in it where Dr. Wu, in the book, he's talking about how when they first created the dinosaurs, they weren't at all what they expected. He was like, they were too fast. Some of them were feathered. We didn't know what to make of it. And John Hammond comes to us and he's like, these aren't dinosaurs. You got to make them slow and reptilian. That's what people know. And so there's an admittance in the book where they're like, we deliberately genetically altered our dinosaurs to look like how we thought dinosaurs would look.
Right.
Instead of how when we first just straight read them, they actually came out like as in a more modern understanding of how we perceive dinosaurs now. And it, like that's a whole other thing. Like that ties back into the whole capitalism kind of thing, where it's like John Hammond's a showman once, first and foremost.
Yeah, the book has all these extra little nuances that it gives you a little bit more into each character, so you can understand like they're not just. I mean, obviously in a movie you have to like get it done in like 2 hours, right? So it gets rushed.
I'm adding it to my list. I have a list here that notes that I'm taking of as we're talking.
Oh,
of
yeah, no
things
worries.
that I'm thinking of that I want to.
I mean,
read or watch or rewatch.
I mean, Jurassic Park. Even the second book was great. The movie, not so much. Not so much.
I love the second book's Genesis because, like, you know, Ian Malcolm comes back in it, even though he died in the first. And Michael Crichton was approached to write the second one because they were the first movie made gangbusters, and they were like, we have to do a sequel. And then Spielberg was like, well, Michael Crichton needs to write a sequel first, and then we can do the sequel. And they go to Michael Crichton, and he's like, nah, I don't want to write a sequel, guys. I'm writing this other thing right now. Like, leave me alone. And then they were like, how about a dump truck of money? And he was like, well, I guess I could write one.
Yeah.
And he brought back, like, Ian Malcolm comes back, even though he, like, very explicitly dies in the first one. He's like, oh, it's just a flesh wound. I got better. It's like, I remember you, like, going in the first one and slowly dying of infection.
But I mean, like, yeah, I mean, money talks. But Michael Crichton wrote a lot of books that science fiction books that we love. Like, I'm sure you've seen Westworld, for starters. Mm-hmm. That's Crichton. That's a Crichton.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Which is
Timeline is actually a good book, a horrible movie.
I never saw the movie. I remember seeing a trailer for the movie, and I was like, oh, that looks neat. And then I forgot about it. And then like a few years later, I picked up the movie's. I bet it got turned into a movie.
It's rough to watch. The book is cool because it's really hard to write a science fiction book, I think, about time travel. And it's really easy to really completely F that up. Unless you're like an old writer like who wrote H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, right? He was just like, we went back in time, it didn't work, we came back. We went back in time, we tried something else, nothing changed, you know? And then it kind of gets scrambled. But you know, it's cool. The thing about Timeline by Crichton I liked is the fact that that dude went in the past, couldn't figure out how to come back, and realizes, well, what I can do is leave behind the information necessary for my future son to save me and bring me back. Yeah. And it's a crazy trip, man. He also did The 13th Warrior, which I thought was great. It was called Eaters of the Congo. Was a good book. It's a horrible movie.
Okay, so I'd only ever seen the movie. I never saw.
I think the book is called Eaters of the Dead. The original book is called Eaters of the Dead. But I would say I actually thought a bunch of us would say Star Wars was our first experience because I remember I didn't get to watch Star Wars.
My real first experience though, like that actually caught me into something. But yeah,
the original, the book or the movie?
The movie.
I didn't get to see that movie till I was much older.
Yeah, no, that's the first thing that snagged me. Well, Star Wars snagged me. I saw Star Wars in the theater. Don't get me wrong, and it blew my mind for real. The movie started over again, and I was so mad that my dad came to pick us up because I wanted to watch it all over again, right? But Dune was like the movie that bored the hell out of me, and then for whatever reason, I got back into it, and my sister and I can quote it now, the movie. Anyway, sorry.
Wow, no, I was gonna. Dune was one of those. Dune. I was the same way as you with Dune. I saw Dune. I was like, what did I just watch?
Yeah.
Right.
I actually only just watched the David Lynch Dune for the first time recently.
The sci-fi.
Like, why did I miss this? This is really interesting.
The David Lynch version's good.
I was young enough to love it.
So what now?
I was young enough to really love it when I first saw it.
I think I saw it when I was older, and I saw it in my 20s, and I was just like, But then there was a version that they did for Sci-Fi, I think.
Yeah, we watched all of that recently. I feel like the Sci-Fi Channel Dune is good if you've read the book because it kind of brings the book to life a little bit. But I don't know, because I read the first book before I watched any movie version of it.
I've only seen the first. I've only read the first book. It's just really hard. Those books are really. There's something about those books that.
A bit of a slog.
Say what?
There's a lot of people to keep track of.
Yeah.
In it, and so I remember like when I read it the first time. I think I was in high school when I read it the first time, and it took me like a couple tries to like get into it and get through it. And it's like halfway through, it grabbed me finally.
Yeah.
And then I reread it recently.
I feel it was that way with every. I felt it was that way with basically
My
every.
girlfriend's reading it right now.
Series.
On the reread, it's a different experience because I remembered enough that I wasn't like lost at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But and then I read through and I read I've read the main trilogy now. I haven't read past that yet.
See, I never read the other books, even though I heard they're great.
No need to.
I'm one of those. Of course, Dune is something that people are passionate about.
Right.
Like I'm one of the guys who I am totally fine with Brian Herbert's and Brian Kevin J. Anderson, like how they've continued the saga. I don't know if I believe that they found all the magic notes and wrote all these books because they just coming up with more content. But I don't care. Like the whole episode 0 of the Bene Gesserit getting a start, and like how I don't know, the Spacing Guild started and all this other stuff. What the third stage guild navigator is, and like how and then like the relationship of like Jessica is to the Baron Harkonnen, just all this crazy stuff. And I loved all that stuff, even though if I was a purist, I wouldn't even touch those books.
Right.
So are you excited about the new movie that's coming out then?
Oh my God, yeah. That's right. That's why my girlfriend is reading Dune right now. She's in Florida. She sent me a picture today of her like the Dune book like on her legs, So she's on the beach reading Dune. Which is
I mean, I've been considering
30 degrees here or something.
Rereading. I've been considering rereading book 1 before I watch the new movie, just as a refresher. I probably will. I just need to be in the mindset for it, I think.
I think if you've read it once, it will be a different experience reading it again, because you won't be going in totally blank.
Yeah, it's just been so long since I read it.
I reread it about maybe 10 years ago, and it was actually a really good experience because it wasn't at all what I thought it was. Well, I mean, like, generally speaking, there were a lot more intricacies to it, that sort of thing that I never picked up on before, or I completely forgot. But yeah, on a I'm going to segue to something. I have this idea I want to throw at you. There's this challenge, like a buddy of mine did, where they try and like, speaking of time travel and speaking of like what your first sci-fi movie was, we had this awesome weekend together, like me and these 2 other dudes who found an old sci-fi movie that we loved as a kid, and then you would try to imagine what it would be like to grow up with this movie, right? Like, for example, I tried to show my daughter Tron.
Oh.
And she was so bored, and I'm like, no, this is amazing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But like,
I found the original Tron kind of boring.
Yeah, but back in the day. Yeah.
Let me bounce Joanna off this call, guys. Give me 1 second.
Sorry.
You're right. But the thing is like, it's, for one thing, it was so far ahead of its like anything out there.
Yeah.
And now you look back at it, it's like, it's so dated, but like, movies are this good because of movies like Tron, right? So I remember my movie, it wasn't just science fiction, it was just any movie, because I was trying to push Super Fuzz on this guy, which I don't know if you've heard of.
You went from Tron to Super Fuzz.
Yeah. So no. So he I had never seen Flash Gordon.
Wow.
Oh man. Oh, so when you were talking about Buck
amazing.
Rogers earlier, it reminded me that like as a very small child, I watched like part of Flash Gordon on TV, and I've watched it more since then, but I have these really weird fever dream memories of just as a really young child seeing
So
seeing Flash Gordon.
Sean Murray and I met So that what's the I forgot the lead actor's name, the guy who plays Flash Gordon.
Yeah, that football player.
The football
yeah.
player. We were
Yeah,
at
it was amazing.
San Diego Comic-Con 2019, the last time that thing happened, and we went to. He wanted to go to this place called Ballast Point out there, and we were on our way there. We stopped at this random dive bar that we saw, and we walk in, and there's a dude dressed up as a bear serving drinks, and this actor who plays Flash Gordon, hanging out and meeting the fans, and we're both like, what the fuck is happening here, you know? So we just hung out, right, and joined the party, and eventually the guy made his way over to our table. He hung out with us for like 10 or 15 minutes. He was talking about Chicago with me. He was talking about Sean lives in Sarasota now. He's a cool dude, and only later did we figure out that it's for that movie with Mark Wahlberg and the teddy bear Ted.
Oh yeah, he is in that.
He's in Ted, but he's also in Ted 2. So this was for the second part. But the whole time, Sean and I were just like, we don't know why he's here and why that dude's dressed up like a bear, but let's have a good time, you know? Speaking of Tron, though, you reminded me, when I was in art school, I met the I don't know if his title is art director or art designer who did Tron. He did Tron, and he did a lot of stuff for Blade Runner back in the day. He was...
Sid Mead?
No, he wasn't the concept artist. This guy's job was on Blade Runner. He designed on Blade Runner, the opening shot where you see the skyline. He designed the cutouts and stuff that they put over the cameras to give you the shape of the. It's actually Chicago. The skyline is Chicago, which he knew one of my instructors. And on Tron, he was the guy in charge of. He did so if you watch Tron, if any of you guys are willing to sit through it again. There's a point in the movie where they don't glow as well, and some points in the movie they glow the lines they have on them are super sharp and perfect, and at some points they kind of half glow. And he was telling us what basically happened is there was a company that they hired, I think it was either in China or Korea, and their job was to highlight it, kind of like a lightsaber effect, right? Go in there and highlight the lines. But at some point the budget ran out. So they had to come up with another method to make them glow. And the idea was they put the colored lines on them and they reflected lights off of them. And the lights would glow. And he had a bunch of stories like this. Yeah, I mean, I would think I was 19 at the time, sitting there listening to him just like, that's awesome. Because I also wanted to do movies when I was that age, So it's all the cool little tricks, He was talking about how they designed the flying car. Blade Runner is one of the first movies to have flying cars in it, right? And in the original, you can see the ropes that pull the car away. They're there, but it's kind of hard to see because it's in the rain. And the director's cut, they obviously wipe them away. But he was telling us all these little movie tricks they did. He was a cool dude. I can't remember what his name was.
I like it when you meet somebody and it is a legend and they're nice. What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of the opening. I think the opening shot in Blade Runner, they do that all in camera, if I remember
right. Yep.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of different exposures and passes where. But I do remember they would film it, rewind the film, set up a different exposure for say the lights.
Right.
Run it through again. Okay, now we have to reset it and redo the exposure for the smoke. And the
correct.
Same thing.
But he was the little shapes you see on the buildings. He was basically saying what they did was. You kind of put a piece of whatever it is to cover up that section of the camera so no light hits it. Yep. And then you get that funky shape. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. And then he's like, it's the skyline of Chicago for some of it. And then I was like, I'm in, so.
There's another neat little, it's a related effect in another sci-fi movie within Escape to New York, or Escape from New York, sorry.
I love that movie.
So when he's flying into New York and he's showing that wireframe of the city, that's actually a 3D model of the skyline, or 3D model. It's a physical 3D model. Right. And what they did is they painted the wireframe all over it while and I think it's painted over a flat matte black paint up over the city. So only the lines will show up.
No way.
Yeah,
I remember that scene.
Doing that because John Carpenter, I don't think he's ever. God, I think The Thing was probably his largest budget movie.
Yeah, do you remember how he did the title sequence to Thing? You know how freaky that. Yeah. Yeah, I saw how he talked about how he did the he just cut out the letters. It's so crazy when you find this stuff out. But he just cut out the letters of the thing, and then he taped it to a fish tank, and then he just got the water to move around. And he just shone like a light in the background of it.
It's such the cheap tricks are the best tricks.
It's so good, yeah. And it's like Mary Poppins. There's this establishing shot of when she's flying in on her umbrella or whatever, the scene, it's like foggy and magical or whatever, or maybe it's a later scene when they're doing that whole alms to the poor or whatever. But somebody just matte painted it, and then they cut out little holes again, and then they just had candles behind it to make it look like the oil lamps. They just did these little effects.
Have you ever seen? I'm sorry, Justin. Go ahead.
I was able to go back to those kind of days and just do matte painting. Love that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like the Dark Crystals. I was thinking of. Have you seen the Fountain? I think it's called the Fountain. Aronofsky's. That whole movie is there's no CG effects in that movie at all. It's it's all practical effects. Yeah, like even
I haven't seen it in a while.
So even like the poster,
that's the most beautiful movie I've ever seen.
So all the effects of him, like when he's in that. So for example, where Hugh Jackman's character's in that orb.
Yeah.
And he's traveling through space and all that. So the orb is a set. The background is black, and then they layer the film on. The stuff exploding is they hired this father-son team that were like metal workers or something, and the oil exploding is basically used like a microscopic camera, and it's in like hot oil or something, and then they throw like gold and stuff in it, and that's the effect you get. There's a whole thing you can look up. Even the poster itself is not photoshopped together. The movie poster is different photos layered to create a poster effect, because Aronofsky wanted it to be like authentic as hell. If there's CG in there, cool. He basically is told us there's no CG. So if there's CG, I don't know. But if you look up things on how they filmed it, it's amazing. It's obviously time consuming, but you see the results.
All that stuff pays off. Yeah, it's like the new.
Unless you're doing something like I was talking about this last week with you guys on the show about how Sam Raimi wanted the scene with Peter Parker where he catches all the food on the tray in the first Spider-Man. It's literally a practical effect that took like 200 or 250 shots, takes to get it.
Oh gosh.
And it's all like ropes coming down and the different objects piling up. And I was like, at first I was like, I think I'd be stressed out trying to do that scene, and then I'd be happy at the end. It's like a ring toss and you finally get it. I don't know, but that's bananas level of. But Sam Raimi's he's like Aronofsky. He's like Christopher Nolan. Those guys all love practical effects in their movies,
and purity of it. Yeah,
I love that idea.
Have any of you guys watched Psycho Gorman?
Oh, I haven't yet, but I mean,
it's got. I don't know if it's. I can't remember if it's on Shudder or on Netflix.
It's renting through Amazon. I know that.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's Amazon. Like where is it streaming? I know we watched it somewhere. It has like a ton of like practical makeup and costumes and like puppets and stuff in it that are like really great. And it's like, why don't we? It feels like a loss that everything, a lot of things just sort of default to all CG instead of doing more of the.
Sometimes it's just a cop out, I think.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that movie. I haven't gotten around.
It's really fun. It's really fun, and then it's like part way through is where there's more of the costumes and puppets and things.
Have you guys seen the new Dark Crystal?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Have you seen what?
The new Dark Crystal series.
Oh, I started it. Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, you could tell where they do some CG stuff, but I'm just like, that's fine with me.
I was really impressed with the level of attention to detail that they gave that thing.
The sets are insane on that. So Dark Crystal was one of those movies that, I mean, that would be fantasy though, but it's still a good movie. I mean,
that was one of the ones that I tried to get my wife. I was like, oh, I love this when I was a kid. I get my wife to watch it and just realized how slow it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, I got my friends to go to the theater.
It's slow. You remember slow, completely different genre, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yes.
I sold my girlfriend's daughter. I just whatever she calls me dad, but like I sold her so hard on that amazing song.
And then she goes and watches it with
She
you.
was so excited to watch the movie, and I'm like, it's slow. It's like really, it's like 3 hours long. She's like, I can't. And like we watched like the first 20 minutes, and she's like, yeah, okay.
You gotta watch.
She never got into it.
Well, that's because the Man with No Name series you have to watch in order.
You're right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I completely derailed.
You completely messed up that movie for her. Way to go. Good job, Mike.
But no, try the thing where like if you haven't seen everything, just like really try and appreciate somebody else's childhood love movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what's so important to them because they hardcore pitch it, and then you watch it. It's like so hard to watch.
Well,
like,
so there's a.
I love trying to like kind of imagine growing up. I resent that I didn't see Flash Gordon growing up. I didn't even know it existed until my friend showed it to me. That's how.
Yeah, so I had cousins who were constantly like bombarding me with, like they would literally we would just be hanging. They'd be like, "Have you seen this?" I'd be like, "No." They'd be like, "Sit down," you know. And next thing I know, I'm watching this movie with them. Tron was one of those movies. Dark Crystal was something I always loved as a kid. I loved Jim Henson stuff, and my cousins. I saw that with my cousins, but I remember. There's a theater here called the Music Box. They do old movies not now during the pandemic, obviously, but their thing is to play classic films like The Dark Crystal. And I convinced some of my friends to go see it with me, and I could tell like one of them really enjoyed it. The other two were kind of, you know, if you didn't grow up with it, it's hard. It's like trying to show your friends Legend right now.
Yeah. Dude, Legend with the new soundtrack is actually pretty entertaining.
For Dark Crystal?
The new soundtrack?
Mm-hmm. I hate that I lost it, but like, so there's a special edition you can get that has the original music by Toto or whoever it was.
Tangerine Dream.
Tangerine Dream.
Yeah.
And
that's the one I know.
And it's great. I love it. And then there's a new one with like a very serious score, and it makes it a completely different movie.
For the original movie?
I love both of them. It's the same movie. Okay. But it's different music in the background. Super, super powerful. Both of them.
I've not heard the new one.
One of them's whimsical, kind of. I don't know. There's like a movie called Made in Heaven that kind of gets to me like in the same way because of the music. It's kind of like ethereal.
Tangerine Dream's kind of like it's like prog rock, kind of.
Loved prog rock growing up.
Yeah.
Prog rock.
But so like this is interesting. So there's this phenomenon I've thought about that I feel like I experienced growing up. Like when we talk about like, you know, like what fantasy or horror or sci-fi or whatever that you grew up on. I feel like today with the internet, everybody's aware of everything all the time, like at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you grew up in the era prior to that, then you had to have, like Alan, you were talking about like you had cousins that showed you stuff. It's kind of like you had to have like somebody cool in your life or random chance or whatever that like introduced you to like the things that you got to see. So in some ways I feel like the stuff that I grew up with, it's very like spotty, the things that I was really into and the things that I did not see growing up that like other people the same age like did see. Like I was lucky that like in middle school, like I had a really cool friend that was like a couple years older than me that had seen things like the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Legend and a couple other things, and like she made me watch them. But like it's interesting to think about like the things I saw and the things I didn't see. Like I didn't get, like I'm in the age group that I got the internet like in middle school. So then like after that, you know, it's sort of like everybody was like on the same page. But before that, like.
Yeah, I totally see what you're saying. Yeah, nowadays someone will say something, you just go look it up real quick, right? And you're just like, there it is.
Yep.
And you could probably watch the whole movie on YouTube or something, you know?
My old roommate, he would say that every once in a while, like, because we're both a little older guys, and he would just every once in a while he would look something up immediately, and then he'd just pause and he'd go, "Dude, I have a computer in my hand."
Yeah. I mean, I remember.
It's a big deal. People don't know what a big deal is. He's like, I can just look up anything at any time. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, I remember watching like Star Trek, for example, when I was younger. I used to, and I remember when the Next Generation came out, they had they had devices like tablets essentially, and they were like scanning medical data and looking up information. I thought that would be kind of cool if you had a tablet that did all that. Now we have iPads, I did go to this cool thing out here in the Adler Planetarium. They had this thing called Third Thursdays, where it's basically they pick a topic like 80s nostalgia or this one was for science fiction, and they have it's all adults only. It's after hours, and it's basically there's usually a couple scientists doing talks. There's a couple like movies playing and it's all sorts of stuff. But there was this one dude there. I remember he was talking about how science fiction paved the way for a lot of the devices that we use these days, like an iPad, for example. Apple is one of those companies that really took stuff from a lot of these books. Like there's a book he showed us. The character in the book is talking about what's called a logic board, and the logic board contains all the information that's out there available to the people. So he's talking about two things. A logic board would be a motherboard, and it contains all the information that you ever need for whatever you're looking for is basically the internet. Two things that did not exist when this book was written. I can't remember the title of the book, but Apple, if you have an Apple at home, they never refer to their motherboards as motherboards. They're called logic boards, which I thought was kind of a cool little throwback. But he was talking about things like different little the things in aerodynamics and in cars and stuff that people like. Basically, his point was there's people like ourselves who are younger, read a bunch of science fiction back in the day back in the day to them was bananas and wild, and they grew up to become scientists and engineers who are like, how do I make this cool thing I loved as a kid into a reality?
It's the imagination rocket. Yeah, like the Abyss.
That's a great movie.
They had the before that full face gear, like where you could actually breathe underwater, where your whole face
with like the liquid oxygen.
No, not that. I mean, that's crazy. But I mean, like just the fact that they had helmets that you could see a person talking underwater.
Right.
You know what I mean? Before that didn't exist, and now it exists. But like it was, that's kind of like a very kind of practical science fiction.
Oh, it's all the. I'm sure if we.
Thing. But that's freaking awesome.
And there's probably someone's probably done the homework on all the little things like that, But it's I forget what's going with this, but yeah, there's a bunch of things like that where and my cousins are all like software engineers and stuff, so they were like, I remember the first time I saw Blade Runner for starters. In my head I was like 14, I think, and I kept thinking they were talking about that James Caan movie with the rollerblading or the roller skating.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Death something.
Whatever it was called. My head kept associating the title with that movie, and I was like, I have no interest in watching a roller skating movie. Stop asking me to watch it. And they took me to the theater out here to watch the director's cut of Blade Runner, and I was just like, whoa. Just blown away, and I immediately wanted to know more about this world because it looks so good.
It did bad in theaters, the first release and this new release. Like I hated that I went into the theater and saw one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. I dragged my girlfriend along who didn't really want to see it because she didn't really know Blade Runner, and she was like, I gotta be honest, like I didn't want to see this, but that's one of the best movies I've ever seen. And there were 5 other people in the theater, and then the same week they tickets were selling out to what's that game movie with The Rock, Jumanji, which is great. It's an awesome movie, but it's like I can't believe they weren't packing them in anywhere near that. Like
because the problem is people nowadays also are used to. They want that instant like Marvel hyped up style action nonstop, and Blade Runner is.
Did the new Blade Runner movie not do well in theaters? I didn't pay attention to that.
It's like the Iron Giant. I went to the Iron Giant, and like I think there was literally 2 or 3 other people in the theater.
The movie, we have a movie theater literally around the corner from our house, but it's like one that they didn't update, and so nobody goes there, which is kind of awesome. So unless it's like an opening night of Star Wars, it's always empty, so we just go see like whatever we want. There's never anybody there, so like I have no idea like what's popular at like regular theater.
I mean, the Blade Runner movies. Go ahead, Andrew.
If I remember right, like once global box office and everything was accounted for.
What's that? What was you cut out?
The Blade Runner 20. What was it called? 2040.
Yeah.
Like I think it broke even in the end. Like it was one of those where the amount it took in was pretty much its budget and marketing.
But it's money, yeah.
I think it's doing now. Yeah, it's doing well now on the back end, like the other one was. It's legendary. Like, I've been in game development for 25 years, and it's amazing how many times people reference. Every time I work on a science fiction game, they're gonna mention Blade Runner.
Right. I mean, it inspired like a bunch of. If you watch the original, that thing inspired so many different movies after and video games. Like, I mean, have you seen the new Cyberpunk game? Come on.
Yeah.
But like the new one, I thought was great, but it just comes down to someone like we appreciate it because we love the original. Anyone new watching it for the first time can't appreciate it because they're, I don't know, man. They don't. It's the speed of it. I think it's good. We're gonna have the same problem when we get to Dune. Is my point.
I'm afraid. I think there's a bit of hype with that, actually. I think that there's a wider audience that has never been touched before that are going to come to Dune. My girlfriend, her daughter, for example, are totally into it. And I've talked about Dune like a nerd like my whole life. And they just always yawn and look somewhere else. But like now with the new preview, they're like, "Oh, this looks amazing!" And they got the big celebs, right?
Yeah.
The celebrities in the original Dune, the director, they were kind of like one-offs for the general public. Who knew Kyle MacLachlan?
I mean, Sting, I think, was the biggest name in that movie at the time.
Yeah, and he did a great job. But now it's
okay.
You got some rock star celebs. Yeah,
I'm really curious to see when the actual movie comes out, like what it all looks like beyond just what's in the trailers.
Yeah,
like some of the criticism I've heard from people who are actual Dune fans is that they associate Dune with the Moebius Dune concept illustrations, and so they think of Dune should be colorful, and it's too brown and gray and dark. But I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other on that. But
that's also
I think everybody's gonna have an opinion. But sorry, what's that?
Oh, I guess that's the case with modern sci-fi, though. Like, that's the kind of trend that a lot of it takes nowadays.
That a lot of movies are sort of monochromatic, neutral.
Yeah, like with sci-fi stuff, it's always like browns, grays.
Yeah, the world is science fiction. World is supposed to be this bleak.
A spaceship anymore, in at least move.
Well, it's cheap to make things that are run down.
Yeah.
I know that it was their marketing cut, but every shot was gorgeous in the preview, in the teaser, right? So I think that they're going to be pure. They're going to stick to that. I think that everything is going to be great. It's like Blade Runner, the new one.
Yeah.
You can't pick a frame in that movie that isn't super thought through.
Denis he's bought a lot of goodwill.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so excited he's going to do The Sun, by the way. Oh my God.
Oh, really?
Have you heard about that?
No, what's The Sun?
Joe Nesbo's The Sun. It's not a science fiction, so whatever, I'm going to make a huge departure. But it's a Swedish author, and he wrote a book called The Sun. I got my girlfriend Dune and The Sun for Christmas. She's never heard of this guy. She is absolutely in love with his writing and the story. She says, I have 40 pages left, and I hate that it's going to end. She's like, I don't want it to end.
It's that good a book, huh?
It's such a good book. So he's going to. So what's his name? I can't think of the guy who hit him up, but the guy, is it Jake Gyllenhaal? Who's the guy? I'm trying to remember this actor's name. Anyway, there's an actor who worked with what's the director's name again?
Denis Villeneuve. I can't remember.
Villeneuve, I think I say his name.
Right. And so who's the guy who starred in the God, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. The Zodiac Murders, the guy who's the investigator.
That's John.
Yeah.
That's him?
Yeah.
So anyway, so he basically pitched this movie to the director, and he said, "Dude, this you love this book. You've got to check it out." And he read it in one night. Like he couldn't put it down. And they're going to.
I'm gonna have to look this up now.
It's such a good it's such a good book. They didn't want to make a movie, like, just it was one of those things. The story was so good, and there's so many aspects to it that HBO is going to make it a miniseries.
Oh, wow.
And like, I am dying to see it. It's such.
So this director is gonna not do a movie, but he's gonna do the miniseries.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
He's gonna do a miniseries on HBO.
Sometimes I think that's the best way to do some of these things, because
yeah,
that way you don't have to cram everything in it. That's my concern with this new Dune movie. Like I heard rumors that it's gonna be 2 parts.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be all that one book and one movie.
Okay, good.
I believe it cuts off like around the time when they escape to the desert, pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I heard.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's a
Which
good
is
segue.
fine. Yeah, because like you can't. I don't want them to cram everything into one, because that's when you lose the essence of what it's about.
So I have a question. Going off of something that Joanna mentioned earlier about how, like, we're all pretty much of the age where when we were younger, like, you either had to know someone or had to have like random chance to fall into something. So what was like a sci-fi thing that was something that you saw it like when you're younger and you're like, this has to be, and then when you got older, you pretty much were like, this has to be fake, because no one else ever mentioned this to me growing up, and I never saw it anywhere else after that. For me, it was, and this was also something that, like, where you mentioned, like, Asimov wrote a book about extraterrestrials.
Right.
There's this scientific illustrator whose name is Dougal Dixon.
What an unfortunate name.
Wait, sorry, what?
I said, what an unfortunate name.
Yeah, it's a peculiar name. But I knew him through paleo art, where I was first introduced to him doing dinosaur illustrations. And then at one point in the library, I picked up another one of his books. He did a series of these books because he was a futurist as well. And he did a series of these books of, like, what life would be like after humanity. And one of them was, like, After Man, which was, like, postulating how would life forms evolve outside of, like, humanity's influence once humans are dead and gone for some, or have just left the planet for some reason or another. And he also did this other book called what was it? I think it was called Beyond Man. And in that one, it was humanity wiped out pretty much every single living organism on Earth. And so in an attempt to refill the ecological niches that they've depleted, they ended up bioengineering humans to fill those niches. And over time, like all the humans pretty much, like all the different human species end up losing their humanity and just become like animals of sorts. And it's probably some of the wildest stuff I remember seeing as a kid, because it was things like there was like a deep space human that was engineered exclusively for deep space construction stuff, and it's basically a human that's ensconced in this turtle shell to withstand like the vacuums of space. And later on, there's like a human that was like engineered to basically replace polar bears, more or less, and basically a Sasquatch. But it has like this symbiotic relationship with like another human that's basically like the tiger leopard variant, more or less.
So like do these books, so I really you kind of are reminding me of, like, I used to love reading the old science fiction books that are like 150 pages, 200 pages long, and they never seemed to like have a proper ending. Like they were just kind of open-ended.
Like, you know what these were like? These were a lot like I'm trying to think of like a modern. Actually, they were a lot like I guess Brian Froud or Iris Compiette's
like
they're like journals,
an encyclopedia of like
like they were like a field guide. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. No, I've never read any of those, but those sound kind of.
I think they're pretty much out of print nowadays.
Yeah, you can probably find them at like a used bookstore or something.
Or I'm pretty sure there's enough concept artists that were inspired by them over the years, that there's PDFs of them floating around.
Sure.
The Aftermath one I know does exist as a PDF somewhere because, I forget the artist. One of them posted an image from that where it's basically an evolved form of the bat. The bat became a terrestrial land creature that is completely blind and hunts solely by echolocation. It's actually lost its eyes, and it's become it kind of actually looks like, I'm pretty sure it's what Sebulba was taken from as a core, because it walks on its like front legs and it uses its back legs to hunt.
Interesting.
So these were library books that you saw that you like impressed upon?
Yeah, they were like library books. I didn't check them out at the day. Like I just saw them that day and I was like, what are these? And I never found them again until like years later. And like it was one of those things, like it rattled around the back of my head. I was like, I must have imagined this because it was too weird.
Mm.
No, it exists. It's funny. I have a buddy who's the same way with the King Kong. Like he, I guess, has a memory as a kid where he saw King Kong reel, or maybe he heard of it, that has a giant spider that he fights. And and like nobody believed him. Like the studio didn't believe him, and he made it his mission. And he seriously would go hunting for this information of like this black spider. And now it's surfaced at some point, like but like people thought he was just an idiot. But he's like this. He's such a true movie purist. He will not watch any. He doesn't have a TV. He only watches in theaters.
What?
And I actually watched a movie with him in Chicago, Alan. Like,
when were you in Chicago?
Oh, it was way before I met you.
Oh, okay.
But
get
yeah,
to live.
I loved the theater there. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was such a fun experience. But yeah, he'll see. He's one of these guys where like you can't. He hasn't seen the movies that you've watched several times that you loved as a kid because it hasn't gone to the theater yet.
Oh, no.
If you watched a nostalgic old school movie here, you either went to the Logan Theater or you went to the Music Box. I'm pretty sure those are the only two.
The Music Box. It was probably
or the patio.
Yeah,
the patio. I don't know if it's
open. I think it was one big cementy kind of corridor.
Sounds like the patio. That's right around the corner from where I grew up.
Yeah. Is there a what's that morning drink? The alcoholic drink, the Bloody Mary. There's a Bloody Mary bar that's near there. If that sounds familiar. Anyway,
that sounds like the Music Box.
It's amazing. Oh my God,
I don't think I have anything that I'm trying to think if there's something I remember from being when I was younger that nobody believed existed. But like I said, I used to read a lot of those. I used to go to the library and just find a lot of those smaller books, and I would just look at the cover and I'd be like, this looks interesting. And I would just read it. And sometimes I'd be like, well, that book sucked. But like I said, they were only about 150 or 200 pages. And again, this was me getting into sci-fi for once in my life, right? But I can quickly name one book that I really enjoy. It's called Voyage to Yesteryear. Everyone should read this book. It's by, I want to say it's James P. Hogan. And it's a cool concept. And it's one of these books, again, that's very short, but it also leaves the reader to figure out stuff on their own a little bit, because it's kind of like those sci-fi authors, I think, back then weren't outlining a ton. They were kind of just writing as they came up with the ideas, and then kind of like, what's that?
Stream of conscious.
Yeah, like a stream of conscious writing, and then they'd be like, "Oh, that might not work," but then they're just like, "The book ends here," But like Voyage to Yesteryear is a cool idea because it's basically like I'm gonna paraphrase because I don't remember it 100% accurately, but it's basically the world is burning out, and you have U.S., China, and I believe Russia are the three. It's kind of like now they're the three main people left alive. Trying to take control, but then they come together and they find a planet X light years away, and they say this planet can house life, but we don't have the technology to put people on the ship and fly out there. So what they end up doing is designing a spaceship with embryos and robotics, and they shoot it out into space. And while this ship is traveling, it's a X amount of time. I think it's like 60-year trip or something, and 20 years before it gets to that planet, it starts growing the embryos. So when they or X amount of years, so they're fully grown adults on the ship by the time it lands on this planet that have been trained to.
Yeah.
What's that?
And they get educated by
the ship. All the stuff on the ship educates them essentially. So they end up going to this planet and taking care of it, and it's a utopia. Now, while this ship is flying there, in our Earth, they've developed a technology somewhat to travel with people to this planet. So they start their journey, and they're sending signals back and forth messages, which take like 10 years to get to this ship that's traveling, then 5 years, then 2 years, then 1 year, as it's getting closer. But the thing is, Earth is showing up with all its politics and all its bullshit. And the planet that's there, that's thriving, is like, we've already got a society, and it's a utopia. Like, one day you're an engineer, the next day you're a gardener, and everyone's helping everybody else out. And it's kind of a cool idea, which it's probably one of those old school sci-fi books I really, really enjoyed. You can get it on Amazon for like $4. You can probably get it on Kindle for $1. It's definitely worth reading. What's that?
You watch any new stuff? There's like, what happened to Monday? There was like a YouTube, one of those promotional like Netflix YouTube videos where they say, here's some new movies that are coming out. And I watched one called What Happened to Monday, and
was that the one with the clones?
Yes,
that's the one with the clones. Yeah,
it's basically not there. There's like it's basically a future where you're restricted to having one kid, but there's also a very prevalent issue of multiple births. So so the fact that she was born, there's 7 of her, is actually almost a normal thing, and if it happens, you basically have to turn in your siblings. And so it's a pretty dark future kind of a thing, and they all like live in this. It's kind of like I'm off on a tangent, but it's similar to what's that one where the hunting game,
Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Hunger Games. So anyway, it's kind of like that. But there's one I really want to see called Wandering Earth that you reminded me, Alan, when you were talking about this other one where they actually it's nobody's heard about it here. Speaking of science fiction, this is kind of strange, but it's apparently like the second biggest grossing film in China.
Wandering Earth?
Yeah, Wandering Earth. And it's on Netflix. And it's basically they move Earth to another solar system, I think, something like that.
We just watched Space Sweepers the other night.
Oh, how was that?
Is it good?
It was good. It was really good, yeah.
Is that on Netflix?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
I'll look that one up too.
I'm typing all these in.
Space Sweepers.
Yeah, man. Send me some notes later if you want. I'll put it all on.
Korean film.
I'm just putting it in our Discord chat.
Oh, that's fine too. That's why it keeps going off. I'm like, who is blowing my chat up?
There's an audible.
Are you getting?
You're fine.
Okay.
There's an Audible book I want to read, but it's one of those cases where there's no digital ebook of it. It's either an audiobook, which I'm terrible with, or it's a physical book, so I haven't gotten it yet. But it's called We Are Legion, We Are Bob.
Yeah, I've read all those. They're good.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're really good. I wish there was more of them.
I really want to read them. I just haven't gotten around to actually picking up a physical book of it. And every single time I checked it on iBooks to see if it's available, it's always as an Audible thing. I'm like, yeah, I can't do an audiobook. I'm sorry. I'm just not built for it.
You might be able to find a PDF somewhere that you can convert for Kindle. I've never heard of this series at all, so
it's
the idea.
From what I understand of it, a guy basically he accidentally dies, and he wakes up to find that his brain has been put inside a satellite probe. And was it the world's governments more or less have gotten like really, really screwy? Is that right, Justin?
They end up basically destroying themselves.
Yeah, like Christian fundies end up taking over America after like oh my god, why am I like an atheist had office for a while.
This sounds weird.
It's kind of strange. Like, so anyway, Bob is the satellite probe. He ends up going out. He he ends up getting launched into space, and it's basically his adventures on discovering life in other in other solar systems and whatnot, and having to like navigate like all the perils of outer space and stuff as a robot.
It's self-replicating. So the idea is that he's supposed to be self-replicating and kind of like seed the universe, but every time he replicates himself, he creates a version of himself that they call it replicative drift. So it's this person that comes out is him and has all his memories, but is actually relatively different. So as the series goes on, ends up being factions, but ends up being like thousands of Bobs, and it's called the Bobaverse. But yeah, so
is it actually called the Bobaverse?
So is it funny?
It's funny. It's very, very funny.
Okay.
And
so is it like? Would you say it's funny like Hitchhiker's Guide?
No, it's not Hitchhiker's Guide.
Okay.
But as a character, he's very sarcastic and very pop culture references for everything.
Okay, I'll definitely
check it out.
Because Hitchhikers was one of my like. That was one of those books where my cousins were like, "It's sci-fi. You'll enjoy it. Give it a whirl." And then it's kind of got that like. What's the author? Is he British? Like, or Scottish?
Adam.
Yeah, he's got like his type of humor took me a minute to like enjoy.
Yeah, it's like not quite for me.
I mean,
really?
I started liking it the more I read it, but initially I was like, this is weird. Like,
I got this series. What? Sorry.
No, as that type of writing is, it's like Lemony Snicket or whatever. I enjoy it now, but when I first read it, I was like, this is not making any sense to me. I took to it as I read it more.
Yeah, I think I just synchronized with it because I grew up kind of goofy, and I bought the collection for my daughter, and it was all in this giant book.
Yep, I have that.
And so she was taking it with her everywhere, and everybody thought she was like super religious and was carrying a Bible.
Yep, that's like my Lord of the Rings book was this big fat book, and they'd be like, "What are you reading?" And I'm like, "Lord of the Rings." It's like you never seen.
Yeah.
I mean, if it kept them away, cool.
Yeah, right.
I'm trying to.
Did you ever read? It's by Douglas Adams. Did you ever read Douglas Adams' other series?
I read
Tea Time of the Soul.
Gently's
Holistic Detective Agency.
I read that. I didn't read his other stuff, but I should. I really enjoy his writing.
It's hilarious. But essentially, it comes from he wrote a couple of episodes for Doctor Who, and so one of the episodes for Doctor Who that he wrote, he never actually ended up using, and so it became this other thing. But
I didn't know hilarious. That. Joanna, what were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna segue, and I was gonna ask. Speaking of things that are humorous, but not in the same, not in that quite type of humor, but humorous and current. I was curious if anybody else likes Gideon the Ninth.
I'm reading that right now, actually.
I desperately want them to make a TV series based on that. I think it would make an excellent series. I'd love to see all the characters brought to life.
Everyone keeps telling me the next book's better than this. I'm in chapter 15, so I'd say I'm about a little more than halfway through it. I won't give anything away because I'm sure nobody. It's too new and people are still reading it. But I agree with you. I like the humor. I like the character building. I like the concept. Like I like the world. It's. I'm sure there's things I'm missing in there because I'm actually listening to it on Audible versus reading it. But I'm curious to know, like, it's got a cool concept. So I'm curious to know where they're going to build off of it, basically.
I love that I feel like the author just took like a bunch of different disparate things that she was interested in or influenced by and just like smashed them all together into something that feels completely different from anything else.
Well, I like the fact she did that without giving up, like, this part of it was inspired by this part of Dune, or this part of it was inspired by this part of this other book, right? Like, she made it her own. She spun her own story from it, and I think that's kind of a cool way to do things. It's you can obviously speak to your influences when you're writing a book, but if you can get around it, even better, right? And it feels a little bit like if you like, Dungeons and Dragons. It's got a little bit of that cool magic. There's got a bunch of necromancers in it, which is kind of always fun to mess around with and try to see how they control them. I personally would not want to control undead, so I'm pretty sure I'd
the second, not to spoil or anything, but the tone of the second book starts out very different, to the point that I was like slightly irritated at first, but like willing to stick with it because like.
So this is that like rare. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's like the beginning of the second book is different and slightly confusing, but in a way that you can tell you're kind of like supposed to be confused. And it's like I was willing to stick with it because I had this goodwill built up from the first book, and then by like partway through the second book, I was like, oh, like totally back in it. But they are strangely like sort of different from each other. I'm very curious to see where the third one goes.
But it's the same author, right? Straight through and through.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I feel like
Dark.
That was. I need to finish it. We've only seen the first season.
It's one of those ones that really.
Is that is it Swedish? German. Okay.
Something like that. European, and then they have just so many characters, and it involves time travel. And then in the last season, I had a lot of space between the first two seasons and the third season. And they just, too much. I couldn't keep track of everything.
One that it involves abducted children? Am I thinking of the right one?
Yeah, you're thinking about the right one.
Okay, we started watching some of that, and we didn't stick with it. So
it's a bit much. It's really heavy.
It's hard to hold on to. Yeah.
I'll have to add that to my list.
I won't start it.
Yeah.
I will not add it to my list.
I'm not sure. Like I like I like stuff like. Have you guys seen What was that?
What's that?
It's like Pan's Labyrinth. I really enjoy that I saw it. Probably don't have the guts to see it again.
Yeah.
That was a great movie, man. I mean, have you guys?
It's so good, and it's so hard to watch.
It is hard to watch.
Yes, both at the same time.
It's
Have you guys watched The Expanse at all?
Yes, I just started the most recent series.
I just started the newest one too. If you haven't seen The Expanse, have you read them? I heard the books are great. I didn't realize it was a book series when I started the show until I was like in season 2 or 3, and then at that point I was like, I'm just gonna keep watching the show for now. But it's got like I like shows like this because it's got the sci-fi element, but it's also got like I don't know how to say this right, but like like a real world element. Like if you were actually on a spaceship, you would have these like the magnetic boots in case gravity dropped out from you. Like when you
sci-fi.
The hard sci-fi, yeah. Like if you're traveling at a specific rate, your body can't handle it, so they do those injections so your bones get dense, right? Or I think that's what it does to your bones. I forget, but it's so you can handle the G-forces from traveling at that speed, which I think is a cool little thing. It's not a big thing, but it's a cool little thing that they put in there, and it's got some of the best ship battles I've seen on a sci-fi show.
It's good.
And I'm looking forward to the new one.
I'll add that to my list.
It's so good. The Expanse.
Sorry, what?
The Expanse.
Oh, The Expanse. Yeah.
I'm glad Amazon picked it up.
Because it's like, I felt like for quite a while before they started this series, like there was no new good sci-fi.
Right.
It was just like missing that. And then I saw The Expanse. I was like, oh yes, finally we're kind of like back to actually creating really good sci-fi TV.
It makes me wonder if sci-fi has kept any of those shows that they had around the same time, because there was Expanse and then there's another one called I want to say it was called Blood Drive.
I haven't seen that.
It's not good. It's about in the future there is no gasoline. Cars run by eating humans.
What?
Oh my god!
And
it's like Mad Max to the next level.
It's very much like B-movie schlock, because like there's a lot of noticeable scenes where a man gets like slammed into a muscle car, and the muscle car just eats him.
Are you sure this is one of those things you think you saw but don't actually exist?
And I distinctly remember seeing, because like it came on right after The Expanse did on Sci-Fi, and so like you come off of The Expanse, you're like, this is amazing, and then you see Blood Drive, you're like, what is this?
I wonder if Sci-Fi regrets letting The Expanse go, because that show's doing so good right now. It's making a lot of money for sure.
It was expensive for them, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's if when you watch it, you'll understand like so there's a cool thing on YouTube with the technology and some of the stuff you see, and it's a lot of that show is practical effects again. Like the magnetic boots are just like some Nike shoes with like a light strip put inside of them, and a trigger to turn them on and off. They have these cool clear cell phones, and initially I thought some, like when you see movies like that where they have like information flowing on a cell phone screen, you think some CG guy had to go through frame by frame and put that in there, but all they did is they have this like plexiglass, and then they printed out what the screen would look like and then just lay it on the plexiglass. And it's literally just a thin like vinyl removable sticker, and then you put a light on it.
Was that Adam Savage's video? When
he was talking to the guy. Yeah, so like the whole show is full of stuff like that.
It's crazy stuff.
It's insane. I'm like, and you can, I love. It's the same thing. Like, obviously, everyone here's seen The Mandalorian.
Nope.
Okay, you can leave the show.
But like, I remember you asked me if I wanted to be a part of that earlier, and I'm like, I haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, that's right. And you still haven't caught up to it.
Everybody but me.
Now you got to give us a guitar solo before you leave. But like, if you watch the making of, once you've seen it, a lot of it is not shot. Like the outdoor scenes are literally just these giant screens that are just set up in such a way it looks like he's outside. They do barely any shots outside. A lot of it's almost 100% of it is studio and practical effects, and it's just like, they put the screens up there. They have specific lighting setup so it looks like the sun is bouncing off of him, and it's hard to tell because of the way it's framed, but it's insane to watch. And the technology is expensive, but they cut corners by doing that because there's not a lot of money being spent on the CG side of things, right? And even like the ship battles are filmed the old school way, like Star Wars, with the rig track and a moving camera. I can get behind that. I love it. I love watching that stuff, right? Because that's what so like for me, I wanted to say what Star Wars was one of these movies that the reason I started going more into the art side of things was I saw Star Wars when I was 7 in a theater out here where they were playing all 3 movies at the same time. And it was me and this friend that lives in Florida now. We were both 7, and our parents took us to see, it was basically all 3 movies with intermissions, obviously, because there were a bunch of kids in the theater. But I remember, like, I wasn't so daft that I was like, that's a real world, I want to go live there. But I was like, that was amazing. Like, and I was like, I want to do what those guys just did. And obviously I don't work in the movies or make special effects, but I'd say I got pretty close. And it really inspired me to like keep focusing on science fiction and building up my style. But that was like, and then I did a deep dive on Lucas, and you hear about all the different things he created, all the companies, and then how he filmed all that stuff. And if you guys ever get a chance to see how they film Star Wars, it's insane. I mean, people are still using that technology and style now.
I still need it. I don't know how hard it is to find it nowadays, but I still need to pick up that book, Sculpting a Galaxy. Did you ever see that?
I don't think so.
It's basically a compendium of all the models that they made for Star Wars, like the original trilogy and the prequels, because the new movies didn't exist at the time.
Right.
But it's crazy how many sculptures were done. Like in actuality, with the prequels, you think there's a lot of CG within them, but there's actually a lot of miniature work within them. Mainly things like Mustafar, a lot of the exterior shots in Tatooine and all that. Like those are all just miniatures.
Right.
And it's cool to see like how big some of them are, or even how small some of them are.
It's that the one where they show like I remember seeing like Naboo, and they were showing like the waterfalls. It was just like salt being pushed through.
Yeah, I think they got in there. It's a dense book. I'm trying to think of like a comparable book I have that's about the same size. It's like it's like 500 pages or so. It's a really, really thick book. And it's a huge one too. It's like almost like oversized coffee table size.
Did any of you get to see the Star Wars Magic of Myth exhibit when it was at the Smithsonian or traveling around at any museums?
I saw part of that here.
And...
They had part of it here at the Museum of Science and Industry, but nothing as big as you can do that on the show, by the way. You can just duck out.
I think I saw it.
They had part of it here, but not the whole. I think the Smithsonian had the largest display of it. I would have loved to see that over here in the museum.
It was pretty cool. Yeah.
They had let me think. They had the matte paintings, right? They had they had the matte painting for Cloud City. My voice just.
When they had a ton of costumes, they had like all the costumes.
Yeah, they didn't have any. They didn't have any costumes here
at the time. Yeah.
The only costumes I've seen are at San Diego Comic-Con when they have those there. Here was all models and not lithographs. What are they called? Matte paintings.
Matte paintings, yeah.
I would have liked to see the costumes though. That would be cool because they don't. I feel like the costumes don't look as cool as they do on film.
The costumes in person, you're definitely realizing like, wow, there's a lot more plywood in these things than I realized.
Well, so I saw two different versions of the exhibit at different times, and the second time I saw it, it included things from the prequels, and it had a lot of the prequel Queen Amidala costumes, which were actually like incredible in person, like tons of like workmanship and detail.
That would be cool to see. I wish I could have seen the costumes.
Like a giant electric cable running out from underneath her dress to light up the globes and stuff that were under it.
Oh, I don't remember that. That's cool.
I mean, I remember seeing this is not Star Wars related, but the people that did Lord of the Rings, the armor was all just like, it's not actual metal armor. It's like a leather that looks like armor.
Mm-hmm. It's PVC. Or the chainmail is, at least, within the Lord of the Rings.
And I'd imagine that's kind of the same stuff they did for Star Wars. I'd imagine the first... I'm getting an echo effect.
Some of the movies I saw, or some of the costumes I saw for the original Star Wars, there was a good one I saw up close of, like, I think one of the Rebel flight uniforms, and you just realize that control box that's on there, it's just plywood. It's plywood with like two dowel rods put on it that are painted to look like buttons. And you realize that the Vader's control box is pretty much the same way, where it's like just a bunch of like paint and wood.
When I was a kid, there was a similar exhibit of Star Trek stuff from the original Star Trek series at the Smithsonian, and it's all like up close, like totally rubbish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Backstage at a magic show.
Yeah, exactly.
This guy in Vegas, it's like that. It's like, I can't believe how horrible this stuff looks up here, but in the audience, it looks incredible. But yeah, I didn't see it up close, but and this is again going to date me, but I saw one of the pod racers. They had a couple pod racers at E3.
Oh,
were like,
I've been E3 forever.
E3's crazy. Yeah, we actually we were working on a rally game at the time, and we actually had rally cars hanging on the walls of our booth. E3 is next level.
I wonder if I've seen you at an E3 show.
No, I've only been to the one. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
But it was like the first time I ever saw Pokemon. But yeah, at a Comic-Con, I saw a Blade costume before Blade came out. And I couldn't believe how small. I said, there's a human that fits in this, you know? So yeah, I guess Wesley Snipes is really small, but it was an awesome costume. I didn't know what it was, you know.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing the set to what's it called? The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh yeah. They had all that stuff at the at MoMA. There was an exhibit of all that stuff.
I love it.
Years
I
ago.
love that stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
I love Sculpting.
one of my favorite things is the motion picture version of the Enterprise, because on screen it looks great, like really subtle detail and stuff for it, and when you see it in person, it's actually really garish. It's like really bright pinks and blues and stuff on it, and it was because they filmed it with like they coated it with like a special paint and stuff, so if it like lights hit it, it would actually reflect nicely and like have that kind of patterning, because I guess like if it was just painted normally, none of that would show up on film.
Interesting.
So it's like
Right.
yeah, it's one of those where like in film it looks amazing, in person it looks like someone, like an amateur painted it, because it's like really bright and garish and it makes no sense whatsoever.
It serves a purpose, but to you it's like, what the hell's happening here?
Yeah, you're really caught off guard by it.
Yeah, that's, when I saw the models at the Museum of Science and Industry, I was like, some of these just don't look. I'm like, did something happen to these models? And they're like, those are the originals. And you're like, what the hell? Okay. Even that matte painting with
Kind of like,
what's that?
I was gonna say, it's kind of like some Sargent paintings.
Yeah.
You look at it from afar and you're like, this is amazing, and then you come close and you're like, the face is like
Yeah.
rubbish. It's
Well,
exactly what it
Oh
needs to
God!
be.
Don't call him rubbish. I would say that they look a little abstract up close.
That's what I was gonna say, abstract.
Yeah, that is all
I was
they are.
surprised.
That's
I
right.
was surprised at seeing Norman Rockwell's up close. Like the first time I saw it, I'm like, wow, this is really flat. And then I saw his Kennedy portrait in I don't know, whatever museum I was in, and that was amazing to me. But like I was gonna bring up something earlier.
Yeah.
There's a science fiction writer. I can't remember his name, and it's been forever ago since I read it. But have you ever read or heard of the book Hacking Matter? We were talking about like how it like science is influenced by science fiction.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it? Are you thinking of William Gibson?
It might be. But he's very pure about like how everything in his books have to be based on real science. Like even if it's not really going to happen right
It's
today,
not William Gibson.
it could happen. Right. So this guy. So basically, Hacking Matter is awesome because there literally is a man-made atom that we've made. Like it's something like 50 times the size of like another atom, but like the ability to make an atom it's crazy how many doors it unlocks. And so like the whole Hacking Matter thing is like you can literally do a thing where you can turn a brick wall into water or whatever, you know what I mean? You can program it and have it be anything you want. Sorry,
You're talking though on a sci-fi level, right? This is
a
not
sci-fi level,
right?
Yeah. So like, but that's the thing is that like this kind of stuff, and the implication was that we're not going to see it in our lifetime. It's not going to be in our children's lifetime, but this kind of stuff can happen eventually, because it tends to need to be evolved with like super cool computers and that sort of thing. But I'll have to like get back into it. I was just curious if you guys had read it. It was super interesting to me.
Yeah, not
I had it,
that
but
one.
on the list.
Yeah, it's the
There-
guy actually has a patent to some.
No.
Sorry, go ahead. What's that?
Oh, I was gonna say if you like that sort of like hard, that really hard sci-fi where it's very much based in reality. Kim Stanley Robinson is another guy to look for that. He has this trilogy called the Red Mars Trilogy, and it's about like the colonization and terraforming of Mars, right? Over the course of like I think 200 years or so. But it's a really fascinating book, or it's a really fascinating book series.
Okay.
And it's one of those.
I
Where,
started
like,
that one, but I haven't quite finished yet.
yeah.
A long time.
Oh, so did you only read the first one so far, or?
I honestly, I don't think I got through the first 2 chapters.
It's definitely, that's the one knock I'll definitely have for it. It's a tough, dry read initially, and it takes like a lot to really get the grease going to get like into it. But then once you're into it, at least for me, I was into it. I wanted to see how the rest of it went out. And at least for me, I was more interested in the politics and the science that was all taking place during the books than the actual like main characters and their motivations. It was one of those where it's like I was way more interested in the world building that was going on than the actual like interpersonal conflicts that were happening.
I'm not sold on it. that did nothing for me.
If you like The Expanse, it might be like that, but I think it's drier than what The Expanse would offer.
Oh, now you definitely lost me.
I might get into it.
Yeah, this dude. So Mike here likes Dune. So
right? You said it was Will McCarthy.
That's hacking. That's hacking.
That's Hacking Matter. Yeah, I was just going back and confirming that's who it was.
Yeah, so I thought William Gibson, but William Gibson is. If you've never read Neuromancer,
Gibson invented the term cyberspace.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think he did cyberspace and he invented cyberpunk, if I remember correctly. And there's a dozen terms he created.
I read Neuromancer like long ago and liked it, but I think I need to like reread it because I really don't like remember much of it. Aside from that, I liked it.
Neuromancer's great. If you can pick up, there's a series of short stories. I got it up there. It's called Burning Chrome. And in that series in that book is where you can read Johnny Mnemonic, which is a horrible movie. It's not a bad movie. It's a fun movie. I shouldn't say it's horrible.
It's got Henry Rollins in it. It's a good movie.
Huh.
For its time. Did you guys know that oh shit. What's his name? Rick Barry. You've met him in IX, I hope.
Yeah, I met him.
He was like on that project, I believe. He's one of the concept designers for Johnny Mnemonic. That movie was, okay for its time. Now it's a hard watch, I think, but if you like Keanu,
I don't know if I could watch it.
It's like a trippy, like, it feels very rushed. But the book, the story in the book is really cool because the movie took some ideas from it. Obviously, didn't execute well, but it gives you a taste of who William Gibson is as far as like this cyberpunk world writing sci-fi writer. I didn't say that right, but you get my point.
There never was a Neuromancer movie, was there? Like, nothing's ever been made based on Neuromancer as like significant as it was.
I think there's a rumor that they wanted to do a movie. I think Gibson did. I mean, my guess is he signed off on Johnny Mnemonic, saw what happened, and was like, never again, because that movie was hard. I saw that movie in the theaters, by the way, if you guys want to know if I age myself there. I thought it was cool. It's like, nowadays it's hard to watch, obviously. So we're a little over time, but that's not a big deal. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about in sci-fi world? We can obviously do multiple calls about this topic because it can go on forever.
Yeah, you can go on forever. Under the Skin's a really good one. What's the other Scarlett Johansson movie?
Under the Skin?
Under the Skin. Scarlett Johansson. Yep. That one's actually that wouldn't be more not really science fiction, but it's but what's the one where she's she takes on the blue pills that basically make her hyper intelligent.
Lucy.
That one's amazing. I love that movie anyway. I've seen it a couple times. Have you not seen it?
No, I heard mixed reviews on it.
Yeah, I can see it I can see somebody having a strong opinion on it. I freaking love it. But what were you gonna say? Sorry.
How do you feel about French art films, Alan?
I don't mind French art films, man. I like French directors like The Fifth Element and
Same guy.
Then it's good. Okay.
Yeah. Luc Besson did that, and he also did Valerian.
So
well.
I have not. I didn't finish Valerian.
If it had different
same reaction Joanna's having.
It had like cool stuff in it that I wanted to like, but on the whole, it was kind of like a mess.
Yeah, that's how.
Yeah, I just felt like because it's based on a graphic novel, and I think they try to. It's hard to. Sometimes they just don't follow the storyboards that are right there.
Yeah.
Like it's right there.
I don't know. I think he followed it enough. It's just
it's the comic. The graphic novel's not that good.
It's one of those comics where it's neat, but it's definitely like a serial kind of thing, like a Flash Gordon's kind of situation. And it's I don't remember the exact origin, but it's a European comic as well. So it's just like a slightly different flavor sort of thing.
Okay. But I mean, I like the director. I was actually a surprise thing I could say is he directed a movie called Columbiana that was shot here in Chicago. I used to do a bunch of extra work back in the day, and I was in the background scene obviously for them. I'm in there for like half a second, but no, this is way before I had a beard. This is also when I had a lot of hair.
You didn't have a beard at some point?
I didn't. It was the other way around. No beard, lots of hair. I got to meet Zoe Saldana. She was the main. I got a cool little taste of how they film these movies because her stand-in was there for like 7 hours while they set up the lighting and the angle of the shots and everything. It was at Union Station here in Chicago, and I was there at like 3 a.m. in the morning to get going on this. And everyone kept saying that person looks like Zoe Saldana, and we're all like, yeah, sure, it looks like her, but it's not her. And then we all assume that's who's going to show up. Dude, she shows up to film like for an hour.
Yeah.
Like once it's all said and done. And that sequence is literally, if you watch a movie, there's a scene where the little girl's walking through the station. It's 5 or 10 seconds. And then same setup with her walking through as an adult being nostalgic. Again, maybe 10 seconds. And I'm just like, all that filming, all that setup for, are you fucking crazy? Like,
spent a lot of money.
It's
What's
insane.
the movie again?
Columbiana. You won't find me in there. It's so quick. It's like I can't even frame myself in there. I did a bunch of stuff on. I was in Dark Knight with my friend. I was standing outside the bank when the Joker's leaving. Yeah, our scene got cut in that scene, but
I inspired the Dark Knight.
I don't know if I. Yeah, okay.
I had this mountaintop like Brotherhood. Anyway.
I don't know if I'm still on IMDb for credit on that one or not. I don't remember. But I did a couple movies back in the day. I had an agent who would call me in, but the problem became so much of the work you do for that gets cut, or just you never. Yeah, and there was a guy there I saw every time I'd go in. The same dude was there, and one time he was like, "The thing with being an extra is you're always going to be an extra unless you decide to go try for a higher gig and get rejections after rejections until you hit it big." And then I was like, the final straw for me, I remember, was I did a thing for, there was a show called the Playboy Club. It was filmed here in Chicago. And I remember it was me, my other friend, and another person of color. And the director cut us all because he basically said, we have too many people of color on the show. And I was like, you trying to say you need more white people? That's cool.
That's the first time I've ever heard that. That's crazy.
Well, you do a couple of these things. And you have to show up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're there forever. Yeah. They feed you, and they pay was fine, but it was more the fun. I had a good time trying to like get my foot in the door. But yeah, back to Luc Besson. Like he also did The Professional, right?
Yeah, The Professional.
Yes.
Yep.
So he's got some good movies under his belt,
He does. And Valerian, for the most part, I'm fine with. I just don't like the two main characters. I think they're really ill-fitted for those roles.
Okay, but he also I'm trying to think of, there's another French director.
So I have a question. So like when you were an extra, you never got like a SAG card or anything like that, correct?
That was stuff I never even learned about till later. This was literally.
Here's a fun thing that's also, I guess it's technically a science fiction movie. Being John Malkovich, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene where after John Malkovich goes into his own mind and then he gets ejected out, and there's that guy that, as they're driving by, there's the guy that chucks the beer can at him?
I'd have to look that up.
So there's a scene like when John Malkovich gets ejected out of his mind once he went through it. There's a guy that's in a speeding car. He yells something at him. He's like, "Hey, fuck you, John Malkovich," or something like that, and he chucks like a beer can at him. He was never meant to do that. Actually, he was just supposed to just chuck the beer can, but he decided last minute to like ad-lib it.
That's funny.
By doing that, they ended up having to pay him a speaking role pay raise.
Oh boy, yeah, that's right.
He got a SAG card as a result because now he was a speaking role.
Yeah, if you have a speaking role, they have to pay you and give you credit, and it's an automatic credit in the movie. Like if you're an extra, there's a good chance they can just cut you.
I was just thinking, like, yeah, that could have been your in. You could have just been like, oh.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that at the time, so like, there was literally a part where I was the director told me to go one way and I went another way, and I ran right in front of Zoe as I was walking, and I was like panicking. I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I got in the shot. I didn't know what I was doing." And the director was all uppity, and she was like, "Leave him alone. He did exactly what you told him to do." But speaking of John Malkovich, I've actually met him when I used to work in the city. There's a Starbucks outside our building. My friend and I would always stand out there talking, and John Malkovich was walking by, and I went, "Hey, that's all I got out of my mouth," before he ran up and put his hand over my mouth, and he's like he didn't want me to say his name, and he went, he had his hand over my mouth, and he went, "Yeah, I am who you think I am," and he just walked away, and I was just like, "Ugh." His hand was on my mouth.
That's like, because I saw. I don't know if you guys know who Karl Malone is.
Yeah, the mailman.
Okay, yeah. I don't. Yeah, not a lot of people do. But anyway,
Sports ball.
I was standing at the light rail in Utah, in Salt Lake City. You know, and I remember this horse-drawn cart comes by. They have these little you can take your date out or whatever. And so the horse-drawn cart's coming by. Nobody's really paying attention because it's common. And I see this really fit black family, which super stands out in Salt Lake City, right? And so I'm just like, look, man, you guys are super healthy and tall and fit, and I'm like, and so I see Karl Malone, and I to myself, I'm like, oh my God, that's Karl Malone, and I said it because he's right across the street from me, and it's like he's out with his family, and I just outed him in front of and everybody's like, "Hey!" They turned. He liked it. He was fine with it, I'm sure, and he waved at us and everything. But I felt bad about, Malkovich. He doesn't want to have the attention, I'm sure.
He doesn't.
Wants to get.
He looked like a crazy person too.
Malone
walking
cool,
around. Malkovich is walking around with a long beard.
Today.
Malkovich is walking through this on Michigan Avenue, so the Mag Mile, and he's got a giant beard. I don't know. He was probably filming something, but he just has a distinct look. You cannot not see him and not know it's him. Oh, yeah. But I was just like, okay, that was cool, man. I've met I've lucky enough to meet a bunch of people out here because they film a lot of stuff, and I've gotten better over the years at not doing the hey,
Yeah, I don't do it.
I did when I was younger because I was, you don't know better when you're younger.
I did. I remember. I don't really know anything about him, but Danzig, I know what he looks like.
That guy is something else.
My brother is a huge fan of his, and he was pushing a cart of stuff at San Diego Comic-Con as he was leaving, and I go, "Hey, Glenn," and I just say,
"Wait, he had to push his own cart?" Yeah.
And I say, I'm like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And he's like, "Hey," and he reaches out and he shakes my hand, and then Andrew keeps walking by and he goes, "I want to shake his hand." He was so bummed that I got to shake his hand.
I like his music, but we tried to watch his horror B movie that he released recently, and it was so bad. So bad.
Oh yeah, I don't think the guy could act. No.
So you're not excited for his vampire spaghetti western?
No.
If the one that he put out so far is any indication, then no.
No.
Wasn't Wizard talking about how they do their casting call for upcoming movies? I think they were calling for Glenn Danzig for the role of Lobo.
No. Hang on a second. You know what? I want to talk to you about that, but let me wrap this up really quick. Thanks for everyone who's been watching. We had at one point about 10 people watching us, so that's kind of cool. Nobody asks questions, which happens.
I super feel bad about I could have gotten a stream going and brought.
No worries. You're on Saturday too. Anyone who's watching right now, Mike's back on Saturday. My guess is Mike, Eli Manaya, and whoever else is available. We're gonna do one on 80s cartoons, which is the regular time that we normally are on. I will drop all the information we talked about as far as books and links and stuff at the bottom of the video once we're off this call.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. It was really nice to meet everybody here, by the way.
Hang on for just a second, okay, guys?